What's up guys? In this video, we are gonna set up some brand new reels right out of the box. So if you pick up some new product, you gotta dial it in. And that's what we're gonna get into right now.
So what I did was I picked some of the most common setups that you're going to see. So I have a baitcaster for a medium or a medium heavy. I have the Helios SX from Akuma. And then I also have
a brand new one. Just don't stab me with, oh God.
And this one is literally out of the box. This is the Shimano Miravel. Brand new. Literally, still got the little tapey stuff on it. So we're gonna show you how to spool these up. We're gonna show you how to pick the right line for how you fish and what kind of rod you're using. And then we're gonna go fishing because that's what we wanna do.
So let's start with the line, shall we? All right, so you go to the tackle store and you see a million different versions of braid.
In colors.
And colors, what do you pick? All right, so in this case, so mainly what we have for you guys is a variety of selections of high-vis braid that specifically we're putting on a spinning reel. If you guys haven't tried braid on a spinning reel before, highly recommend. You're gonna have more sensitivity, you're gonna sense every single bite, you're gonna feel it a lot more. And with high-vis, if we're going finesse, we're gonna sense and see those other bites that we otherwise may have missed, especially with like a green or like basic color braid that's gonna be blending in with our surroundings. A great example of that basic braid, which will be going onto a reel today, is this Eminent braid. This is 8X braid from Soft Steel line. It is one that we've been using for multiple seasons now and have had a lot of luck on. Very nice braid, good option. For sure.
Now, when you see the 8X, what does that mean? So when I see like X8, that's a very common thing that you're gonna see. That's the number of strands that are woven into the braid. A lot of times you'll see an X4 as well. Now, why would you want less strands of braid? How is that helpful for you? With less strands, even though the strikes are more similar, with an ultralight application, you're getting a lot more softer, not as stiff line. And so for those ultralights, it's going to be able to do what you need it to do under the water. And then the sensitivity is going to be there too, because braid is incredibly sensitive, and that 4-strand braid is going to connect you to your line much better, especially for those ultralights. So I would recommend for anyone 6-pound, 4-pound, take a look and think about that 4-strand versus the 8-strand. It's going to be a lot thinner.
I mentioned high-vis braid. Now, high-vis braid obviously means high visibility. I can see it really well. Look, there's bright yellow. You got a lot of options on the market. So let's look at a couple. Yellow is probably one of the, if not the most common high-vis color you're gonna see. Made kind of famous by like Power Pro, Strike King, all of that. But there's also chartreuse.
Which really, if you are, if you're a nerd, you'll know that this color of bright green is the most visible color to the spectrum for humans. So you will see this color more than the yellow technically by the human eye. Now again, depends on what kind of water you're fishing, what you like to see, just in general. I think between chartreuse and the green, it's just preference. Yep. Which one do you like better? One with more of a white in it, which is going to be the chartreuse color. Fish don't see white nearly as well when they're looking up compared to the greens. If you're using the yellow, this one's gonna have more white in it, so maybe if you're using short leaders, that's the way to go. If you don't really care, or you're not sure, or you just wanna see the line that's really important, I would probably go with the chartreuse, this bright green.
Or you can go with straight white, which is another great option. So this is from Suffix, and yeah, that just straight up pops. Something I'm used to seeing in like the ice braid category, but that you can get for open water applications as well.
The nice thing about white is it's gonna blend in with the water and everything else really well, especially when the fish is looking up. So you can see the white pretty well, maybe not as good as the green or the yellow, but the fish are going to see it a lot less. So you can get away with maybe less leader, or again with that ultra light. Yep. I think that's a really good option, and one that I'm really trying out this year. So we have 3 different versions I have 2 different versions of the white that I'm going to be trying this year. Really hard to find white in anything less than 10 pound. 8 and 6 and definitely 4. Really hard to find a white in. So I have the Suffix. This is the 832. This is a really popular brand. So I wanted to try this one. This was really neat. They're using the Gore brand on there, the brand name. So if you're not familiar with Gore-Tex, that's like a liner that you would find in a jacket that will breathe really well. So when you're getting hot, it expels the heat, but it doesn't allow water in. It's 100% waterproof. So it's a really cool material, super expensive liner for jackets. I actually found out Oral-B floss actually is made of Gore-Tex material. They're like super smooth or whatever. Yeah. And then they're using it here as well. Now Gore-Tex, if you don't know, is actually white. It only comes in white. There are no other colors of Gore-Tex. Gore-Tex coats have an outer layer that can be colored, but the Gore-Tex is always going to be white. So I think it's really neat that it's in there, and I'm interested to see you know, how it actually like turns out. So this is an 8 strand right there.
I wonder if that means this color won't fade because
it is white.
It is white.
Yeah, it's not like dyed white.
That's interesting.
It is white.
Then we got Yozuri Super Braid in a 10 pound, and that's also white. All right, so real quick price analysis, you guys. Of all the lines that we have, we're gonna run through them real quick. With the price, we got Power Pro, which is pretty standard. If you go to a store, you're probably seeing Power Pro. You're not seeing a lot of these other brands, especially with high vis. It's hard to find in stores. You're probably buying these online. Online, if you get 300 yards of this, it's close to 30 bucks. So for the 150 yard, which is what most of our other spools are, you're
17 bucks, something like that.
Typically around 17, 18 bucks. So pretty high end cost wise.
But that being said, even harder to find is this Yozuri line, this Super Braid. This was 15 bucks from like a Bass Pro Shop for 150 yards. That being said, I know when I bought it, I paid like $22 with the shipping. So a little bit more expensive per yard.
But you had to get the color and to get the weight, the pound test line that you wanted.
White was the hardest to find out of all these, not close.
Yep.
So the Suffix 832 for 150 yards. Again, this one is the 6 pound. I paid $20 delivered from Amazon. And then I had the same exact price on the J Braid, the 8 pound, 20 bucks delivered from Amazon. So that includes the shipping, just to make the call out there.
Just so you guys know, Eminent Braid is no longer being offered by Soft Steel. They're kind of like phasing it out, but they still have a bunch of it. So if you want it for basically free,
well, it's on blowout clearance, 70% off.
You
the
can get
last
it
time I checked.
Super cheap. So
and I put this on my Instagram a few times. You will not find a better deal on moss green braid. Like they only make the moss green.
Only green.
But it's really good braid, and it's 8 strand, just solid braid. And it holds its color better than most. Way better than Power Pro and some of the other ones. It is the cheapest deal you will find on braid anywhere. Again, assuming it's still on sale by the time you see this. 70% off on an already inexpensive braid that bangs. I cannot, we've been telling everyone that's on like our members lives or anything, like go buy it because you won't get a better deal.
So see if it's still there. Go to our link in the description below for Soft Steel and you can pick some up. Other than that, bam, the cheapest line we could find. Yeah. So this is Onyx line from PC Fun. It's on Amazon. You can get this for less than 10 bucks and then 150 yards as well. And this is 6 pound test. So this was for my ultralight setup. And then we got Contra Braid from Striking, which is their new like economy line that is actually pretty popular and very strong. So, I mean, it's not like their tournament grade stuff, but it's pretty high quality as far as what I've seen. I've used it a little bit. We saw it at iCast. We talked to some pros at iCast that have been using it. They love this stuff. Also, it's the only one that came with this fancy little suction cup, but you can save these things. Once you run out of line, save that suction cup because it just screws off and you can use it on all your other spools. Makes spooling really easy.
And we're gonna show that in a few minutes. So we're gonna actually spool up some of these and we're gonna show you how to spool up both a bait caster and a spinning rod. We'll show you a couple of methods, like one if you have 2 people, one if you're like stuck in your house by yourself, and another one that like if you're in your truck and you just got to spool something up, which is where I find myself, my unprepared self all the time. We'll show you a trick for that too. So should we do that? Before we do that, let's talk pound test for the type of fishing you do.
All right, so keep this in mind when you guys are choosing your braided line for your setup. If you're going bait caster versus spinning reel, you're probably looking at different pound tests. So first thing I would say is look at the rating of your rod that you're using. Because if you're using the wrong rating for the rod of the braid that you're using, you're gonna break off a whole bunch and you'd be super mad.
And your casting will not be effective.
Exactly. Also check the rating on your reels. And your reels should come with a rating both for braid and for fluoro and probably for mono as well. So that should help you as far as like a guide goes. If you overload the braid, if I throw on like 100-pound braid or
you're
whatever.
You're only getting 30 yards on there and you're gonna be upset.
You're gonna be very upset. So first of all, check the rating. It's the easiest way to figure this out. There's also lots of great resources online if you guys want to choose the specific pound test. Here's a quick chart for you guys showing you the breakdown mono to braid equivalents. One thing I will say is like if you got a heavy stick for frogging and you've got, you know, a reel capable of loading up that line, make sure that you're loading the line appropriately, like 50-pound test, 65-pound test.
Let's talk to that really quick. So general guidelines, like if you're a beginner, you just bought a rod and reel and you're like, well, what do I grab? If you're frogging and it's like a heavy stick, minimum would be probably 30 pounds. General guidance would be 50. And if you're in a place where you know you're really going to have a lot of trouble, maybe 80. That would be my general recommendation. Again, this is taking a lot out of context. We're just trying to give you some generalities. standard medium heavy setup, like your go-to all day, maybe you're doing some medium jigging, maybe you're doing some chatterbaits, whatever, that type of thing, I'm probably going 25, 30 is probably 30 is going to be my recommendation. Something you can put a leader on for sure for lighter application, but when you're going straight braid, 30 pounds going to cast well at that like 3/4 ounce, quarter ounce, 3/4 ounce, somewhere in there. Anything below that. So what I'm going to spool up today is actually a medium action, and it's still a little bit faster. So what I'm looking for is, this is going to be for like bladed jigs and jerk baits. That's like my kind of the sweet spot. I'm going to be typically running 15-pound braid, and then I will put a leader on top of that. But for this one, I really want to mess around with how some of these reels work, and just my general, one thing I'm going to try this year, straight fluoro on that setup so I can run spinner baits on it too. So I'm going to be running 15-pound straight fluorocarbon. That's like, just again, general guidance for like the 3 probably most common bait casting types.
So, I mean, case in point on that, just an example for you guys. I originally got a Dobbins Fury Magnum heavy rod early on in my fishing career, and I didn't know what to load it up with. I spooled it up with, I believe it was 20-pound braid. And what ended up happening with a Magnum heavy 20-pound braid, the braid was underrated for the performance of the rod. So the power of the rod
And the lures.
and the lures I was using, because I'm throwing big heavy jigs. Basically, anytime you set the hook, it snapped off. And there's nothing you could do about it. Like, that is just underrated braid for the power of that rod and the lures being used. That's what will happen if you choose poorly. Or the opposite direction, you overload your braid, and then again, like Paul was saying, you can't spool up enough line because it doesn't fit on that reel, and your castability is out the window. You have no accuracy, your casting distance has dropped to less than 50%, you're toast.
You're backlash a lot too.
You gotta be smart about choosing this braid. Just something I had to learn the hard way, and I want you guys to learn now before you make a mistake.
100%. So the next thing we want to talk about is spinning setup. So I personally feel like it's a lot more difficult to pick a really good dialed in braid or even line, but really braid for a spinning setup because there's so many different ways, and there's a lot of intricacies when it comes to like picking a spinning setup versus a bait caster. I feel like there's a little more leeway. That's just my opinion. Man. So what I'll do is I'll talk about my most generic setup, like maybe the 2 or 3 that I use the most, and then you can kind of make an inference from there. Oh, and by the way, I as a fisherman, because you'll see my setups in a second, 99% of the time I am going with a braid main line and a fluorocarbon leader for almost all my fishing with spinning. I like the added sensitivity that it gives me, as well as a little bit more confidence to either upsize or downsize when it comes to rod power. So I can downsize and feel confident I'm not going to lose a fish. I can upsize and feel confident that I'm not losing sensitivity. So that's just, in general, like my recommendations are all going to be braided main line.
Yeah, and also to the point of leader lines, some of you guys are going to be like, you don't need a leader. They're going to be like, it's placebo effect. Listen, Tactical Bassin said that you need a leader or you're missing bites, and I listen to them.
I listen to them a lot.
Just saying.
So what I've got in my hands right now that I'm going to spool up for you in a few minutes is a medium action rod. So this one, I'll just give you the stats so you can get an idea. This one is a 7.2 medium, 8 to 17 pound rating with a 1/8 ounce to 5/8 ounce lure. So basically,
you read that upside down. That was pretty impressive.
Wasn't bad. 1/8 to almost a 1/2 ounce. Real size, I'm not going to talk about that. Just I'm assuming that you've paired it up properly. This is a 2000 size with a medium stick. This is probably I want to cover the largest range of weights. And so this is probably the most flexible, probably the one that most people have in their boats. I would say I want a 10 to 15, maybe 12 pound braid line, somewhere in there, 10, 12, 15. One of those 3 ratings, I think they're all good, depends on how you want to fish. And then as far as color, moss green works just fine. If you're doing a lot on the lighter side, or you're fishing in an area or with a style where you want to see a bite, or you feel like you just want to be able to see the line more, my recommendation, I'm going to be trying white this year, but I would just go with the yellow. It's the easiest one to find. It's going to be the cheapest, so I'd recommend a yellow braid.
This stuff.
And then for your main line, let's say, just for example, you're like me, I'm going to pick a 10-pound braid. Half of that weight, roughly, or up to that weight. So for 10, anywhere from 5, but really it's going to be 6, 8, or 10-pound fluorocarbon.
Like that.
Yep, and that's where you're rating. So if you were using, let's say you're using 20-pound main line, you could do from 10 pound to 20 pound as a leader. That's just general guidelines. Again, there's no real hard and fast rules, but if you want to be successful and not have to worry too much about screwing up, that's your general guideline. So for me, if you want to do an ultralight, for example, so that's another. I'm going to spool up an ultralight here later. For an ultralight, I'm going to go with, we'll say, 6-pound braid, and then I'm gonna go with a 4-pound leader. And then color, you choose whatever you feel like works for you. That's my general. And then if you're going with a medium heavy, so maybe this is your Carolina rig setup, spinner bait setup, something like that, where your weights are gonna get up to maybe that 3/4 ounce, I'm probably gonna go 15 to 20-pound braid, and then my leader is probably gonna be in the, we'll say, 10 to 15-pound range for the leader. General guidelines.
Nice.
Boring. Let's go ahead and spool up.
All right, so a couple methods for you guys on how we're gonna spool up. We'll show you on camera here. One that I recommend that I found recently is, ready for this? Make yourself a line cart. Excuse me, sir. Look at that.
It's kind of great.
I made a line cart. So it came with these little shelves, and from Soft Steel, on super clearance, like we said, you can pick up these 1,500 yard spools. So you have braid for life. And then you can just go grab these on Amazon for basically free. It's a little line tension guide, right? So it has this little hole here. You just thread your line through that. You put it over the spool, and then that's gonna hold tension as you're spooling. So if you have the issue where without this, there's no guide, there's no tension, this thing's spinning like crazy, you're gonna over spool the spool, and it's gonna get all tangled up, it's an absolute disaster, it's no fun. So if you wanna have more fun, you can make it super easy. Just get like 2-3 of these. I usually leave 1 or 2 of them on like these main spools.
And we'll show you some methods where you can do it just like by yourself, without someone to help you.
This is an example of doing it.
The traditional method would be take something like a pencil, or in this case, this little piece of metal or whatever, something that's gonna fit inside of the middle, poke it through the label that's almost always there, and then you would thread your line like we're gonna show you in a second. I would ask Jeff to hold this, and then I would just start reeling, and this would spin off. Now this protects from overspool, like Jeff was talking about. If you didn't have this elastic thing on there, Jeff would like have to provide some tension. Basically have to hold it with his fingers or thumbs or whatever, so that it's slowing this down and you're spooling up appropriately. We'll show you some other methods. If you're like by yourself and you're in a pinch, we'll show you what to do. Got my spool here, whatever kind you have, it doesn't matter. Pulled enough line out so I have a little bit of room to work with. I'm gonna set that aside, I'm holding the line still. And now I have to tie a knot. Now this is where, depending on what type of reel you have, things can get a little bit dicey. So I'm gonna show you what I think is probably the easiest method, but people with a reel like this may not even know that they can do this. So you can see there are holes inside of the spool. See these holes right there? That is actually gonna make my job so much easier. And I'll show you why. So the first thing you're gonna do, you gotta pretend like you're doing everything backwards, right? So if this is my baitcaster, my rod's going out that way, I have to thread through all the guides, and the line has to go through this hole first. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my line, and I'm gonna put it through there. This is where things get tricky. If you didn't have these holes in here, you would have to go like through the bottom, have the line come out the other side. This is where things can get a little bit tricky. But with the holes in there like this, all you have to do is thread the line through 2 of those holes. So I'll show you how I'm gonna do that. Put it through one, comes out the other. So you can see how that's going through right there. Pull it out, like so. So now I've got this line coming through my line guide and going into 2 of those holes. And now I'm gonna tie the knot. So the knot I'm gonna ask you to Google this. It's called an arbor knot. It's basically an overhand knot, just like you're gonna start by tying your shoes. So I'll just do it on camera, but it's not gonna be the best tutorial in the world. But look up arbor knot. It's probably, in my opinion, it's the most common, easiest way to do this. So tie an overhand knot, tie it tight, and now I'm just gonna tie another overhand knot, and that's gonna create overall a slip knot in my line. All right, so we've got my 2 knots, and now I just want to pull hard enough to cinch down the knot, not so hard that I'm gonna break it. That's like the most common problem. Even if you're using braid, these will break off. Like this, it's the most frustrating thing. All right, so now I'm gonna cinch down this knot. Hopefully it still works. Yeah, there we go. So now I've got my knot cinched nice and tight, but I'm not pulling so hard that it's gonna come off. This is what I was talking about. This is why having the 2 holes in here and be able to go actually tie a knot around the spool is so important. If you didn't have that, you would just have to tie this line around a smooth spool.
Man, a good example would be an SLX. Now, obviously, I've got this spooled up, but if you guys have ever seen an SLX out of the box, it's gonna be a completely smooth reel spool. So what you need to do with that is you end up tying this knot, and then you just slap a little bit of electrical tape over the top of that just to pin that knot into place. And as you wind up the line, it's gonna bind to that electrical tape as well. That way you don't get any slippage. Basically what happens is if you just tie the knot and you loosely spool up, you're gonna get line slip, which is gonna feel like, oh no, my drag's not working as you set the hook. It's not your drag, it's the spool and the line's just rolling on your spool.
It is.
It's an absolute disaster.
And it's like, doesn't get talked about enough. Like, it should be in the instructions in every reel you get.
It
like,
should.
either use electrical tape or here's how you spool this particular reel.
Yep.
It's so frustrating. Lewis has a really cool thing where they just have one, like, little notch inside of here. And when you tighten down the line, you just tighten it right up to that notch, and the knot actually fits inside that notch, and then as you're reeling, it holds it in place, which I think is a really cool idea. To me, this is the best one. It's the easiest one. It also makes it so you don't have to get the line all the way around the spool, which can be a little tricky. So I love this method. We are now ready to start reeling in. So I've got my line, I've got it cinched tight. Oh, I do need to snip. I should mention this. You are supposed to snip the tag. You definitely want to do that. I'm gonna go ahead and snip my tag end here, just so I don't have a bunch hanging out. And now I'm ready to spool. So now we're gonna show you a couple methods. And one thing that is very, very, like the most important thing, you want the spool to be spinning and the line to come off this way. You do not want it to spool off this way.
Yeah.
Because as you can see, maybe you can. This is still coiled. See how coily that line is? When it comes off just like this, where it's spinning around, that's bad. You will get line twist just looking at your rod. You don't have to do anything. It will be wrong. You always want to pull off so that this actual spool is spinning. That's what you're looking for. So we're gonna show you some methods that guarantee you do not have that problem.
All right, so I have my handy dandy, very expensive thing here. It's a pencil. And then I'm just gonna hold it like this.
He's got tension on it. I'm gonna pinch the line and I'm just gonna start reeling. You always want tension on the line because that is going to give you a nice tight spool. And that's what you want, is nice and tight on the spool. So I'm just reeling up all the slack. I haven't even hit Jeff's stuff yet. And as soon as I do, there, now we're ready. So Jeff, he's pinching these together, so I don't have to do that anymore. And now, see how tight that spool is? Really easy and smooth. So that's method number one. That's if you got a buddy or a pair of Crocs.
If you have no friends.
If you have no friends and you don't have Crocs, this next one is for you.
Oh man, are we gonna make money off of this?
Here are my toesies and a bunch of trash.
Oh
so,
no.
I got my setup here. This is if you have no friends and you're by yourself. So I'm just gonna set the spool down. I'm gonna step on the line. I'm gonna get this pencil out here just to make a mess. And then, don't do it on me. And then you gotta just reel. Nice and easy. Just enough tension to keep things nice and tight. And look how simple that is. This only works with carpet. I don't recommend doing this on hardwood. It just seems to work a lot better and gets the right tension. This is not a perfect method, but it works in a pinch.
All right, so you still have no friends.
Per usual. I still don't have any friends, but maybe I'm in my truck and maybe I broke off or I have a new reel, I forgot, or whatever. I don't know. You have to spool up when you're in your truck. What I do is pretend like the back seat of my truck or the front seat of my car is like right here. I would take the spool, I would lay it down right in the seat, somewhere in the seat, and then I'm just going to take a sweater or a t-shirt, I'm going to throw it over the line, just like that. This is like, it's too easy. Now you can pinch, that's probably the way to do it to provide the tension, but this just keeps things flowing super easy. Not the fastest, but my God, it is so simple. And yeah, if you got a shirt, you got a reel. All set. All right, so next up we're gonna do, Jeff's gonna eat, and I'm gonna do this spinning reel right here. First thing you gotta do is, there's almost always like a piece of plastic around the spool. I don't know why they do that, I mean branding I guess, but it's almost always there. So I'm gonna rip this off. Boom, now you got your spool. Now, when we were talking about a smooth spool, this is what we were talking about. There's nothing for the line to bind against. Whether it's braid or mono or fluoro, this can cause that slippage. I promise you it'll be the most frustrating thing that you run into. So we're gonna try and be really careful about that. I'll show you the electrical tape trick. I think it's the easiest one. I'm going with this Yozuri Super Braid, the 10 pound. Again, this can be for my medium setup. The first thing you wanna have is your bail open. That's going to make sure that you don't get the line in the wrong side of the bail, which could be a huge issue for you. So have the bail open, and then you're going to tie another arbor knot. This is the exact same knot. It's just 2 overhand knots. One thing I like to do for spinning reels, because you can get away with it, just take a big loop and then just do it ahead of time so you're not messing around and dinking around with the reel first. So I'm going to go ahead and get a little more braid here. I'm going to tie an overhand knot. I'm going to tie another overhand knot above it. Again, super simple. Look up the arbor knot and you can see some tutorials. This one is not great. We know that. Tie another one.
I think it looks good.
And now I'm left with this big loop. And then I just take again, the bail is open. And I just slip that loop over. And then I'm just going to cinch it tight. Again, I don't want to pull too hard. I just need to get it on there. You can already see how much of a pain in the neck it is. All right, so now I'm on there. I'm going to snip my excess. Jeff needs new scissors. Holy cow.
Well, all my good stuff's in the boat.
It shows. I'm going to tighten up this drag. And then I'm going to take a sliver of electrical tape. It doesn't take much. I would say like 1 inch is probably perfect.
But if you do more, it doesn't make that much of a difference.
No, you just don't want to overdo it. So take like 1 inch there.
So I will say on like downsized spools like this is a C20 Samar, so it's like the second to lowest. You'll notice you'll have to cut that then, skinny lengthwise, because otherwise you're gonna like overlap the top cap and you're gonna have other problems.
This I don't have to worry about. So
That's pretty big.
I typically go right over the top of the knot. It doesn't matter, nothing else matters. I just go right over the top of the knot like that. And I do pull it really tight. So that's what it should look like. And then flip your bail so that you are ready to reel. And then you're just gonna do the same exact thing. So I'm probably gonna do the foot trick again.
Because he doesn't have a friend here.
Do you want a friend?
Oh, now he has a friend here.
I'm just so not used
All
to having any.
All of a sudden.
I'm so used to having
Where'd
no
my
friends.
wonderful pencil go? My most expensive device. You think I'll find it?
Ah, your hand! Not quite.
All right, go ahead. You thought I was gonna stab my hand?
I mean...
Who am I? Me? Ah!
So the one thing about having a friend is they're gonna...
They get shredded by this stuff on the
use
back
your
end.
thumb. The other thing about a spinning reel, because it's moving left and right very quick, you need a little more space. You can't get right up close like you can with a baitcaster. Otherwise, you're gonna get this like shuddering, and that will create space in the line. So you gotta step back a bit.
So we're gonna be off camera. Oh no! Ow. 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 How much longer, Dad?
Put the sweater down.
This is...
Oh, I hold
That was helpful.
for me.
Get this out of here. Woo!
So one other thing, you don't need to spool up the entire like 150 yards onto here. A lot of times you can get away with, especially with a spinning setup, you can get away with doing 75 or 100 yards, like a fraction of that. A lot of people will tell you too, because the braid's expensive and you don't have to like spool the whole thing, you could do mono for like a half your spool and then finish off the rest of your spool with the braid. It's a good way to save a little bit of money. In this case, I'm not gonna do that. I'm basically done. I put like maybe 70 yards on, less than half the spool, and like I'm good to go. That's all I really need.
And also, if you're not fishing for a species type that typically goes on long runs, you really don't need that much braid at all. So you could underspool these and be perfectly fine. If you're fishing for bass the way that we are, if you got like your medium to medium heavy setup, like that fish is not going for a run. You're gonna land that fish pretty quickly.
If you're a catfish or salmon fisherman, that's different.
Exactly. So, obviously, again, choosing the right line and situation are based around the situation that you're in. What a chore we've done.
So now we string them up, we go fishing.
All right, you guys, so that's basically everything you need to know. You get your brand new reel, take it out of the box. There's a lot of things that you got to do. Now, in this video, we really only covered like choosing the right line, spooling it up, all that stuff. That gets you like almost to fishing.
You get to the water.
Yeah, you're there now, and you got line, so you can tie lures on and stuff. Now, the next big thing, especially with bait casters, mostly with bait casters, is dialing in that new reel. Right out of the box, unless it is like top of the line,
even then,
maybe even then, but like a Shimano DC type reel. So a Curado DC or the SLX DC, you don't have to do that much to like get it going. But let's say that you grab any other reel on the market. You're gonna have to do some things to dial it in. So we'll make a separate video on that. I think it'll be a lot of fun, hopefully be helpful for you guys, and hopefully this video was helpful for you. If it was, consider liking and subscribing. We appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you on the next video.
See you.